parts of the portfolio. You're going to have some sort of artist biography, an artist statement. I like both. Not everyone does both. Some people just do a fairly descriptive artist bio. I like two shorter sections personally, one which is a little bit more sort of technical about who you are, what you do. Again, someone asked about rewards earlier and like CV elements. That's kind of where we're going to build it in a bit. I'll show you a good example of one. And then the statement, which is who you, as you say, it's the I. It's who I am. It's that emotive drawing you into the work, isn't it? Then we have the artwork itself, which we're going to talk about how to select that. An exhibition list. I'm going to show you how to do one properly. Some people, I think you should always include one. Some people don't find it very relevant. In a portfolio, in terms of, rather add a little bit more info in that regard than not have it there at all. But we'll look at what that looks like and how do you select what goes in that. And then, again, your content information, social links, don't forget content information. Selecting artworks. What do we select? How do we pick? We've got 50 artworks. What is the right one? And this is where we really need to think about context and who we're pitching to. So, is it a gallery? Is it a grant? Is it a residency? What are their requirements? Are they accepting pictures? What is their style? So all of those, I think, pieces of research you did, this is where they're going to come to pass. Is your work relevant? If so, what is relevant? You may, if you've been working for a while, you may have like a very broad sort of range of work potentially you've done. Not all artists, but often you'll find quite a broad range. We have to think about, what is it that I want to put forward now? Is it my most recent work because I'm super experimental? Or is it the thing that's maybe just one step back from that, which is a little more solid? Which is the piece that's relevant to the gallery, and which one am I choosing to show? Your most recent work isn't always your most relevant work, because you might not have actually cemented what that's going to be and where that's going. So have a think about that. And then also remember, what you pitch to your gallery is what they're going to expect to continue seeing for at least a teeny bit of time. I have at least once had an artist who pitched an exhibition. We accepted it. It was part of a committee selection as well, so it was a group of us who selected. And we thought, great, love it, perfect. I then went to the artist's studio a few months later, sort of getting towards the show, walked in and the work was completely different and completely outside of what we had thought we were getting. In the end, we made it work, but in a commercial gallery that might not, I was working in an NPO space where we could get away with it. In a commercial gallery that might not sit well, there's a trust process involved in this. You should, of course, have more conversations with your gallerists, but just be aware that what you're pitching to them theoretically is what they are expected to see in the next step. This can change, and this will change, and it should change together. You should be able to show progress over time. But in this initial stage, remember you're introducing the best version of yourself first up. I reckon about 10 artworks is a good portfolio length, but anything more gets a bit tedious, anything less, I haven't really seen what you can do. So somewhere around that mark's good to go. You might be tempted to put everything in, avoid the kitchen sink approach. Variety is a difficult one. What progression do we want to show? What do we not want to show? Sometimes what you leave out is as important as what you leave in. If you've also made a very big jump, we have to think, is there a connection? Is there a reason? You've been a potter and then become a printmaker. Is there a connection between those two works? So does that gallery want to see that connection or not? So have a think about those. There's an art form to this, and you get better at it as you do it. Does that answer the selection question? Okay. Then artist biographies. So, what, why, what is it going to be? It should incorporate a sort of summary of your practice. What are you doing? Who are you? Are you a painter, potter? Get that out quickly. I love a good, strong opening line that draws one in. It's like any writing. I don't like it when people start with their biographical detail, for example. Like really, unless it's very specific to what you're doing, unless being based in South Africa is super important to your work, I don't necessarily want to know that first off. You can drop it in later somewhere. But yeah, I don't want to know where you were born, I don't want to know where you studied particularly, unless it's very relevant. I want to know who you are, a lot like the artist statement, and have this sort of very broad overview. A good thing to remember is I heard a study a little while ago, which was done at the Art Institute of Chicago. And although it's not specifically artist bias, it's just an interesting thought. They looked at how long people spent looking at art and reading labels in the gallery. And it worked out that people spent about 15 seconds reading the label and 15 seconds viewing the art. I thought it was interesting that it was 50-50 as a split. Genuinely thought people would spend more time looking than don't. Average person reads at about 15 words, about 5 words a second, 15 words a second. I wrote it down, I'm gonna check. So if you're doing 15 seconds worth of reading, you're only going to get through about 70 to 80 words. It's a good indication of people's attention spans. So if you can, in those first 80 words, have got your message across, you're guaranteeing that that person has a good setup for how they view the rest of the book. And this is something you can use in any form of writing. So keep it in mind, attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. I would keep my bio short as possible. Artsy did an interesting, they had to write like 7,000 artist bios at some point, and their recommendation was between 80 and 140 words. That's for an online platform, granted, but it's a good benchmark at this point. Artist statements, I'm not going to get into this in depth, if you guys have done it. I just love this quote. There are a few things that an artist statement is not. A manifesto, an art history lecture, a story about discovering art, short fiction, self-psychoanalysis, a string of advocates, a grand theory of everything you've ever made, or a list of your career accomplishments. I like that part, print it out, keep it somewhere, think about it when you're writing. It's a helpful one. Yeah, she's a beautiful writer as well. So again, we're answering those questions that you guys talked about earlier. What kind of art do you make? Why do you make that art? And how does your art reflect what your motivation is? Next. So, does anyone want to feel against what that means? If you're thinking it's nonsense.
I think it's after postmodernism we had postmodernism, so maybe it's what comes after the post of the post of the post.
Could be what comes after the post of the post of the post. What it actually is a load of nonsense. So, one of the things that I do want to just, in terms of common mistake, the first and biggest one is art speak. Post-retromodernism was a phrase a friend of mine used when he thought someone was talking at him about artwork. He used to try to get them to agree to a statement that involved post-retromodernism. Because that was his litmus test to go, this person does not know what they're talking about, or this person is just agreeing with whatever I say. So avoid jargon, avoid complex language, and I spoke about that earlier. I just want to really hammer down on a couple of points which you've already spoken about, but that is the big one. It is frustrating, it's alienating. If we want to talk about accessibility, it's potentially the worst thing you can do. And also, you asked about AI earlier. AI is great at art speak. It's very good. So stay away. Laundry lists. Avoid listing schooling, exhibitions, accomplishments. Only highlight it if it adds narrative value. So we're going to look at what a exhibition should physically look like, but think about what goes in there, especially if you've been practicing a long time. I had an artist who applied for a grant I'm working on, and she has been practicing for 25 years, and she listed every single thing she's ever done. It was a 6-page Word document, and it didn't tell me anything because I grew tired halfway through reading it. So think about what are the truly important exhibitions I've been in. Make a selection. Hyperbolic praise-based language, widely regarded, has made significant contributions to any unsubstantiated phrasing. It's not helpful, it also doesn't reflect well on you. I have a curator who shall remain nameless, who once described herself to me as an iconoclast, which I thought, oh no, that is those things other people can apply to you, do not apply them to yourself, please. Don't waffle, don't repeat, edit, less is always more. We're actually going to do a little exercise in editing in a moment. Spelling and punctuation, it sounds silly, but please proofread. This is where AI is super powerful. I like to use Bard, which is the Google version, it's not ChatGPT. I just put my words into it and I just ask it to proofread. And then it won't change it, it will just make sure your grammar is correct and it will tell you what it's changed as well. Some of them will just spit out something and you have to go find what they've changed. So that's where it's a super powerful tool to just get that clarity through. And then there are specific punctuations and grammar that is relevant always to art. So stick your title, your exhibition title and your artwork title. You can either put it in double quotation marks, please, not singles, or in italics, but pick one and stick to it. Don't mix and match in a document. Pick one, stick to it. Same with nationalities, dates of birth, things like that. Pick a style, if it's South African, comma, thing, or in South African, born, blah, blah, blah. Pick one, stick to it. Don't mix and match. Gold rule. Also, because it becomes really frustrating if you mix it, if you change your exhibition title or artwork title, if you've done one in quotations and one in italics, and then I don't know what you're referring to when I read later on, whether this was an exhibition or an artwork. So, as you guys should read through this biography quickly, it's one I quite liked about Juliet. Read through it, have a think, and I want you guys to just point out things that you think are a strength in it, and things that are a weakness in it. Okay, this is the boring bit, but it's really important. Captioning and labeling of your artworks. Every gallery has a slightly different way they do this. Every person has a slightly different way. There is no universal standard. This is what I think is a good way of doing it. And it is really important because remember, you are part of creating, you're starting at the beginning of the provenance of your artworks. So you are providing the primary information, and if you provide the wrong information, it's going to filter on down through things. So take your time to caption correctly. Remember, this is there. If, for example, I am making your artist catalog, I'm going with the information you supplied me. I'm trying not to change anything. So think about that. First and foremost, okay, if it's your portfolio exclusively, you don't have to put your name first, of course. If it's part of a group portfolio or something of that nature, you're going to put your name. Then your artwork title in italics. Then your medium next. People have different theories about the capitalization. Either you can capitalize at the beginning of it or not. Up to you. I wouldn't. Then addition, if it's relevant, of course. Please, if you're doing print photography, put in the addition, even if it's unique, then say that it's a unique print or unique edition. You don't want someone to have to come chasing make sure you state that if it's relevant. Second, sculpture also can be addition. Your dimensions, height, width, depth. Stick to one form. Only put in depth if it's 3D. And your dimensions for flat work are always unframed, unless otherwise stated. That is important because remember, your work, the work is a size, and the framing is the X. It can change, because someone can change that when they buy it or whatever. So always, in terms of having the most accurate information, it's always your unframed size. You can also chat to your gallerist about this when you're giving them info if they want to know what the frame size is too. I like to indicate if something is framed and give the frame size, especially if you're sending out to clients. And then the last thing is the date, which is the year only. You'd be surprised how many people are giving me actual dates for artworks. Don't you know that you did it on the 30th of September? So yeah, just the year. Sometimes it's a personal choice. If something has taken, if you started it in 1 year and it's honestly taking you a few years to work on, sometimes painters will put in the duration. So they did it from 2001 to 2003. It's very unusual. You don't often see it, and I would only put it in if it's super relevant to the process of the work somehow. But yeah, again, I've also seen that when people told me it took from August to September. Don't care. Just put the date, please. Just again. Then the next one is your exhibition and achievement list. Should you include one? The answer is yes. In all likelihood, if you're doing a portfolio, someone wants to know a little bit more about you. It doesn't have to be your life's history. We want the relevant exhibition. So your solo and your groups, your awards and nominations. The nominations is a touch and go one. I would say only put it in if it really is like a very good achievement. Being part of the top 100 of the Southern Portrait Awards is impressive, but there are a lot of them. So be cautious of that. And then residencies, again, if you feel like it's relevant. What I would do personally was split those things out. So I would have a group, a section which is group exhibitions, a section which is solo, a section which is awards and nominations, and residencies. If I wanted to include residencies, it's a personal choice. First, beginning of the year that the exhibition was hosted. Oh, and also, format these, please. Line everything up so we can read it properly. Begin with the year that it was hosted. Then your exhibition title, again, I would recommend italics. If you're doing a purely chronological one and you haven't split it into group and solo shows, then you need to indicate somewhere in the title, preferably straight after the exhibition title, if it was a group or a solo exhibition. It is fundamentally important, especially, for example, I'm working on a grant at the moment where how they tier you into what level of grant you receive is by how many group and solo shows you've been in. So we need to know that information often. It needs to be easy to find. Your gallery name, I would recommend the full name and the abbreviated name of commonly used. So the Association of Visual Arts Galleries, AVA's full name. Most people refer to it just as AVA, so I would put that things. Same with something like MoMA. And then the location, which is the city and the country. Remember, when you're sending to people who are not South African, just putting Cape Town is not always sufficient. Just putting Bloem, Torch, or Klerksdorp is not going to help someone. Please put in the country as well. It's also good because it shows if you've moved around a bit, if you've visited in different countries. It's always nice to see. So yeah, again, I don't know how to express how important and how annoying it is when these aren't done right. So really think a bit about it. It is quite important information. Okay, then I want to talk about selecting artwork, but I want to talk about photographing your artwork for your portfolio. Professional photography is expensive. Not all of us can afford it, many of us can't, but the good news is most of us have cell phones which are fairly capable actually. So I'm going to run you through like a bit of a DIY approach to photographing artwork, but it's worked really well, and it's an important thing because remember this is the first interaction with an artwork. And what I recommend is even if you don't think this artwork's going to land up in a portfolio, take a decent picture of it anyway. You never know when you want reference to it. So if you can get into the habit of actually documenting what you're doing, it's very helpful to you. And it's actually quite nice to sit back and look and see what you've done. It's a good pat on the back. So, how can we get this picture? Let's just do this. As I'm going to refresh this picture, because those pictures are quite give you half a second. If you have to. If you have access to a decent camera, go for it. But a lot of us are not photographers. I'm definitely not one. I have no interest in really learning, if I'm honest either. So I needed a bit of an easy guide to this. So the first thing is good lighting is key to anything. Natural light works best when trying to photograph your artwork. So look for indirect light, whether inside or outside. Avoid harsh direct sunlight shadows or contrasting light in dark areas. If you're going to photograph outside, it's like an overcast day. Actually today, it wasn't blowing a gale, would be great because it softens that light out nicely. Or if it is very sunny, get your work into a completely shaded spot because then the light will be even. But also you have to be in the shade too with your camera. You can't be standing in a bright patch and trying to photograph something that's in the dark, in the shadow over there. It won't expose properly. And then if you're photographing inside, which most often you're going to end up doing, avoid tungsten lighting or warm overhead lights. My test for that is to take a white piece of paper and photograph it and then see how true white it is in the picture. If it goes that yellow color, it's going to alter all of the colors in your artwork. So keep that in mind when you're trying to photograph something. Use the white paper test to begin. Then, placing the artwork, if you can, hang it up on a wall. If you can't, try and lean it as upright as possible or clip it to something. And if you're working on paper, get a stiff sheet of card and clip your work to it. So prop it up as straight as you can. It's going to make your life easier, especially if you're photographing with a cell phone. After you find the right light spot, or get a helpful friend to hold it up for you. Oh yeah, the big one. You can photograph glass works that are behind glass. We're going to struggle and you're going to curse yourself, so don't. Remember to photograph before it goes to the framer, please. If you have to phone your framer and beg him, can I please come and take a picture of the artwork, do it. It's very frustrating, it's very difficult to get right. If you're in a position where you have to, the only way I've ever managed to do it actually successfully is you get someone to hold a sheet up for you, and then you cut a hole in it and plug the camera through it, and you stand with the glass artwork in front of you so you can take it direct on and it doesn't reflect you in it back. It's a real fact.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but it's a fact and I don't recommend it. It's just so, the black or white sheet can do the trick, but just save yourself an effort and a wasted vision. So do it before glass. Then taking the pictures, of course, if you have a tripod, use a tripod, prop your phone up against something. Make sure it's straight onto the artwork as well. If it's tipped forward or back, you're going to lose edges, and it's going to make it more difficult to edit. Take a lot of artworks, a lot of pictures. Never know which one's going to actually work. Get as close to the artwork as you can, get as much of the artwork in frame as you can. What I do want to point out is if you're capable of taking good pictures or you have someone who can do it, and you can get into different artwork in context, then do it if it's going to help. But if you're doing it yourself and you want to get them to look as professional as possible, you're going to land up cropping them out and putting the artwork as visible. And then the next part is the editing. Hopefully, if you're taking a good enough raw picture, you don't have to edit too much. You're just going to want to, the most important is you're going to want to crop it as tightly as you can. That is, yeah. You can immediately see the difference in terms of the professionalism of just having it cropped out and having just the image. It makes a big difference to when you're trying to showcase your work. And then try and keep if you're gonna have to tweak color, keep your artwork next to you and picture it in front of you and try and get it as close as you can. You don't want to dramatically alter the light of your picture. Avoid flash. Don't try to do this at night. Flash sucks the light out of a painting. Give it your best shot. It is very possible. And sculptural works, again, if you can get someone to do your sculptural pictures for you, do it. They are very difficult to showcase well. You have to think about the context that it sits in order also specifically for scale. Something like a ceramic pot is easier when it has a little shadow or a satin pin, you can sort of see the size of it. It works okay on a pure white background. It's very clean, very commercially done. Whereas a sculpture like that wouldn't work at all in that type of white space because you have no idea what its content is. It's site specific. So think about that with sculpture. And think about trying to showcase if it has scale in it at the work on the end. By showcasing that it's sitting on a floor with distance to the wall, you can take a guess at how big that is. If it's truly big, and you can have a person near it in a sort of artistic way, that sometimes helps. But if you want to showcase the work, think about how you're going to show scale. Any questions about that and photographing afterwards? The DIY approach. Oh, the only other one is you don't do video work at all. Performance-based. Okay. Difficult one to show in portfolios. Yeah, if you can embed, if you're happy doing that, embedding links, embedding sort of videos into your PDF, that's great. Or see if you can't do a series of really good screenshots that kind of tell the narrative a little bit. It's a very tricky one to showcase. I've always struggled. Make sure there's always a link to something that's hosted on like a Vimeo or something. Vimeo is my favorite one because you can password protect it and have really high quality video on it as well. So yeah, more tricky to do, sorry to say, but it is possible. Then your last page, your links to your social media. Only if it's relevant. If you have a page that's dedicated to your practice, don't link to your personal pages. It seems self-explanatory, but again, I feel I need to say it. Your contact details, even if you don't have phone calls, please put your phone number and your email. A website link if you have one. And then a headshot. I like a headshot. I like to see who I like working with. I think it looks nice. I think it gives you a life and personality. This you can figure out where. Sometimes it goes next to the bio, sometimes it goes on the last page. It's about where you want to put it. If you have a nice one done, I would say put it in. But also kind of give it context to what you're doing. I would recommend, this is not a hard and fast, your corporate headshot may not be the best representation of you as an artist. So think about getting someone to take a beautiful picture of you in studio. I love that one of Robin because she looks so happy. It shows a little bit of her with her work. It tells a bit of a story. Remember, everything you're doing in this is generating story.